Hey, Larkin Rose here, and I'm here to do a response to the inevitable and so predictable tantrums of the mainstream media in response to the HBO series, The Anarchists. I knew this was going to happen. Pretty much any voluntarist could have guessed that this was going to happen. The mainstream media can't have this be a rational discussion. They can't actually have a reasonable exchange of ideas. So they have to demonize, and they have to just blatantly lie, and they have to fearmonger, and they have to do everything under the sun to avoid this being just a rational discussion. And of course they're doing that, but it's almost funny to me. And the thing is, I know a lot of people who are actually voluntarists are going to be upset because the mainstream media is just lying about them, just outright lying about almost everything, as you're about to see. I didn't even go through these articles yet. I picked a few titles. I think it was literally the first four. If you Google search HBO, The Anarchists, one's CNN, one's The Daily Beast, one's, I forget. A bunch of just utter garbage, but it's still fascinating to watch. And I would encourage voluntarists, don't be upset. This was absolutely inevitable. Of course they're going to do this. This is the mouthpieces of the ruling class responding to people who say, we don't think there should be a ruling class. How did you think they were going to respond? And it's funny how much they just have to lie and make stuff up. They don't even try to say, well, here's why intellectually you're wrong, and here's why. They just have these weird tantrums and literally hallucinations. These reviews are literally hallucinations. They're reviews of things that just aren't the series and didn't happen. And I know it's easy to be upset if you're one of the ones being mischaracterized, but I've watched them do this for a quarter of a century to the concept of anarchism, so this doesn't surprise me at all. If anything, it's funny that they have to go this overboard in their lies about it to try to make people not just intellectually and calmly paying attention to what's being said, because then people will go, oh, well, this makes sense, and yeah, that's kind of what I believe. No, it's fear and death and mayhem. So it's actually almost funny the way they do this, but I understand why people are upset. Now, some voluntarists have their nitpicks about the series itself. The thing is, people are people. If you have a big group of people, and if you have an organization, and if you have an event that happens, some people are going to like how it's done, and some people aren't going to like how it's done, and there will be little, disagreements and drama, and that's true in any group. And so some voluntarists are like, well, I don't like how this clip made us maybe look, and I don't like that individual being a representative of these ideas and stuff. And to me, that's all just sort of who cares. The actual ideas are portrayed accurately and repeatedly in the series, because the people who made the series understand the ideas, and they're not making a hit piece. And they're not trying to mischaracterize anything. And yeah, there was drama and stuff that happened, because that happens in any organization. But to those of us who are accustomed to being maligned and demonized and lied about constantly in the media, obviously there's the temptation of we want the best possible representation of these ideas, and human beings are still just human beings. And it's I don't want people to think we're just mindless, druggy partiers, because some people are. You can be an anarchist and be a druggy partier. You can be an anarchist and be a conservative Christian. You can be a zillion different things. And it's natural for people to go, oh, I don't want people getting the wrong idea about what kind of people we are. Well, that's the thing about anarchism and voluntarism. You can be a gazillion different kinds of people. All you have to do is oppose the existence of an authoritarian ruling class, and that's the thing we have in common. And the beauty of things like Anarchapulco is that you see a gazillion different people from different walks of life with different attitudes and different priorities and different preferences and different lifestyles and all that stuff. And so, of course, the HBO series, follows the story of this event and focuses on a few individuals. And if those individuals don't happen to have your exact, like the way you would say things or the lifestyle you would have or whatever, kind of so what? Like, they're representing the ideas. They're not running for emperor. Like, there is no leader of this that we all bow to and go, yes, he is who we are all trying to emulate. It's literally a bunch of people who understand one idea, which is don't have a ruling class. So you know, the voluntarists are already going to be on edge, like, oh, I don't want us to look bad because they always make us look bad. And then, so here's the mainstream media. Now, this isn't the series. This is people reviewing it. But it's literally not people reviewing it. It's literally people just blatantly making up lies. They're just Pravda West. They're just making up reasons to try to scare people away from actually thinking about it. And their lies are just amazing. The things they just make up about the series. Because I was at Anarchapulco for 6 or 7 years in a row. I missed the last one because of government ridiculous fascism going on and it being a pain in the neck to travel without getting the jab and wearing masks and all that stupidity. So I didn't make it to the last one. And there'll be another one, I guess, in February. I don't even know. I don't know who's running it now. But I'm just going to briefly go through these. I'm not going to read them all the way through. But just to show the desperation and the dishonesty in the mainstream media. This will be funnier if you've actually seen the first one in the series. I haven't seen the other 5. It's a 6-part series, but I know what's in it. I went to the events. I was there. And I'm familiar with the people involved and the people whose stories the series follows. I know them. I know them personally, and I know what happened. And so to watch the mainstream media's version of what happened is just, it's bizarre. It's like if you went to a happy picnic at your neighbor's house and the next day on the news, it was like utter chaos and death and mayhem. And you're like, it was a happy picnic. What are you talking about? So here we go. So we're going to start with CNN. This one I glanced at. Most of these I haven't even looked at yet, except to see their stupid headlines. So CNN, first of all, is becoming less and less relevant, and this is exactly why. It's because they're so obviously propagandists for the ruling class that nobody believes them anymore, and their viewership's been falling apart. So here's the title. The Anarchists, referring to the series, charts the predictable implosion around Anarchapulco and its founders. What implosion? Like, we're still here and we still believe the same things, and like there's still the event and different people run it and different people do. Okay, why is that an implosion? Okay, so here we go. The funny thing is the picture they use has me and Amanda in front of a bonfire. Oh, because scary fire. It's people like happily getting along and having fun on a beach. And, oh, you're supposed to be scary. Okay. The docuseries has become a fertile space for strange sex and outlandish personalities. The thing is, if you watch it, you're like, okay, those are normal people who, like, heard about a different idea. It's like outlandish personalities. And HBO's The Anarchists certainly falls squarely within that zone. Possessing a bit of Fire Festival vibe. I don't even know what that is. This 6-part project is a mostly fascinating trip down a very particular rabbit hole, assuming that you can stomach the steady diet of took one political science class psychobabble that goes with it. Just, they can't even make it through the first paragraph without just dripping with condescension for anyone who doesn't bow to their ruling class. And the funny thing is, one of the things that actually surprised me is the amount of substance they actually got into the first episode about the philosophy and the concepts, and covering a bunch of stuff and even like mentioning a bunch of books you can read about it that are very academic and intellectual. And so just this condescending, and literally they're whining that the indoctrination didn't take. Like, you're supposed to worship the ruling class and think it's legitimate for them to boss you around and steal your stuff. And if you don't, then you just took one political side. Just, And this is supposed to be like a review of a series. And it's just immediately this bitter, whiny thing. Okay, so continuing. Indeed, the great irony of something like The Anarchist hinges on its focus on people who smugly believe their way of life is vastly better than that of the rubes who go along with societal norms. First of all, it's a lie. Like, most societal norms are voluntary. It's the way we behave. Second of all, we are. We are better because we don't advocate violence against our neighbors. And for CNN, the apologists for the war machine and all the corruption that goes on, and they keep covering it up and lying about it. And, where's that list of Epstein's clients? Oh, they're the people that CNN kisses the butt of, so you're not going to hear about that. You're not going to hear literally child molesters maligned on CNN the way you will see people who advocate peaceful coexistence being maligned on CNN. Oh, they smugly believe that their way of life is vastly better. Yeah, because we advocate nonviolence against other people. We want a voluntary world in which people don't initiate violence on their own or by way of government against their neighbors. And yes, that is morally vastly superior. It's peaceful coexistence. Meanwhile, CNN worships the giant authoritarian monstrosity that is constantly forcing its way on everybody and warmongering around the world and abusing and exploiting people here. Okay, but let me back up. Like I said, I'm not going to read all of these. Who smugly believe their way of life is vastly better than the rubes who go along with societal norms. It's not about not going along with societal norms. It's we don't want a giant, corrupt, authoritarian ruling class robbing everybody. There's a difference there. Only to end up feeding a sense of superiority among those watching in the TV equivalent of craning one's neck to see an accident. This isn't even good writing. If you're going to be bitter and whiny, at least be better at writing it. Covering a 6-year span, director Todd Schrammke Todd and Kim made this thing, and we know them, and they're friends of ours, provides a window in an event known as Anarchapulco. The first factual statement. Good job. A gathering of those who advocate anarchy and achieving a state of self-rulership. Okay, kind of. It's a weird way to phrase it, but close enough. One that doesn't recognize governments and questions laws. We don't just question them, we say they're totally bogus, but okay. And it's not really doesn't recognize them, it doesn't recognize their authority, but close enough. As one might expect, the people drawn to such a philosophy tend to lean towards the eccentric. Well, that's kind of true. And I've explained before that the freaks and weirdos are always among those who first question the status quo, because if the status quo isn't serving them, they have a reason to question it first. The thing is, voluntarism is no longer limited to freaks and weirdos, and I, in some ways, put myself in the category of freaks and weirdos. Lots of successful, normal, very educated people are now involved in going, yes, this is the way society ought to be without giant, corrupt political ruling classes. But, totally demonize the people who believe it. Placing many of those who choose to settle in Mexico to pursue this life at odds and turning the event that spawned it into this, quote, this haven for crazy people. As member Lisa Freeman says, you lying sack of crap. Like, I know Lisa, and she's being sarcastic. And it is, like, there are a bunch of different individuals and different personalities, but, like, the way he writes it, it's totally supposed to be condemnation, as if Lisa meant it as a condemnation. She's one of the crazy people, and she's awesome, by the way. And I love that the first one focuses on her story, and I assume later episodes will too. The byproducts of that acrimony and chaos. Give me a frickin' break. Have you seen the videos of Anarchapulco happening? Chaos. It's like this formal, nice event where people give talks and they do, and then late at night, some of them go have a party and dance around. Like, which part of that is the chaos? And then, so they talk about Oh, okay, so they're talking about somehow Bit Club gets dragged into that and invest in cryptocurrency. I haven't even seen the other 5, so I don't know how much it covers these things. But they very much want to demonize crypto entirely. This is a scam because it's a threat to the banking industry. And so they pick some little organization or event that like got in trouble for one reason. I don't even know about the details of that. But it's sort of like saying, these people over here did bad things with the dollar, so anybody who uses dollars is an evil person. Quote, and they're quoting Lily here, not all anarchists are going to like each other and get along, says Lily, which is truly true. A name used by one of the members, which exhibits a gift for understatement. No, it does. Like, to all of those of us, and there are thousands of us who have been to these events, reading this is so weird because it's just somebody making up crap to make it sound bad. Okay, Chomsky does an inadequate job explaining the roots of anarchist impulse, and how all roads lead to author Ayn Rand. No, Ayn Rand wasn't even an anarchist. Like, she's mentioned in there because she said some smart stuff. She wasn't an anarchist. And the idea that she's the foundation, no. Perhaps inevitably, the weirder the anarchist gets, the more compelling it becomes, in much the way something like Q Into the Storm did. So, guilt by association. Ultimately, the documentary serves as an obvious cautionary tale about the appeal of nonconformist movements that require cooperation among people who aren't inclined to trust anyone, including each other. Just making shit up. If you've been to these events, they've been in these huge hotels with these big meeting rooms, and people are getting along and they're having chats, and it's like if you didn't hear the sound and didn't know what was being discussed, it's like about as respectable and civilized as humanity ever looks. And they they don't trust each other, like we're throwing Molotov cocktails at each other in the halls or something. It's just ridiculous. And the fact that, there are conflicts of like, well, we want it done this way and we want it done that way. Like, that's in everything. And of course the story is going to include the drama. When it's about an event, it's going to include like, well, some people didn't like it being done this way and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, okay, and that's basically the end of that hit piece. But they just have to lie. Okay, I'm not gonna read the who is Decider? I don't even know them, but it's one of the headlines that came up. The Anarchists on HBO, a docuseries about the chaos that ensues when the government-averse descend on Acapulco. What chaos? This is so, it's offensive and ridiculous, and I can see how people can be upset who are part of this and have been to the events and are like, what are you talking about? The chaos that ensues. It's just a nice, formal, calm thing with a bunch of like speakers and events and stuff going on, and it's so ridiculous. I'm going to scan this and see if there's anything. When we talk, hey, at least they got one thing right. When we talk about anarchy with regards to this group, we're not talking about people in favor of lawless free-for-alls. No, these are generally peaceful people. Wow, okay, I'm a little bit surprised who think that self-rule is more effective and freeing than government rule. It isn't just more freeing, it's the only moral choice, as opposed to having a ruling class. Okay, I'm not even going to read that whole thing. That he might have actually done a good job, but I don't have time to go through it. And I haven't even heard of the Decider before. Here's The Guardian. Anarchy in Paradise. How a fringe community descended into darkness. What darkness? You mean like when the sun set and we were hanging out on the beach and talking and having fun discuss? What descended into darkness? Like, we're all still here. The event is still happening. Like, somebody else is running it. Now, I'm going to throw this in. I don't want to give any spoilers for those who don't know the story. Like, I know most of the people in the series, and I know most of what transpired. there was a murder that is obviously going to be covered in the series. And the way the media talks about it, they want you to think, yeah, a bunch of anarchists got together and they were like shooting at each other and stuff. And the murder wasn't at the event. It was miles away. It wasn't related to the event in any way, except the victim of the murder is part of the community who believes in a voluntary society. So what a weird, creepy, gross, dishonest way to try to malign a bunch of people who believe in peaceful coexistence by going, look at what it led to. It didn't lead to that. One of the people who believe in peaceful coexistence got murdered by somebody who didn't. Now, the details of how it happened, I will, again, I don't want to do much of a spoiler, but was a direct result of statism. Either way. There's two possibilities. It was either the result, in part, of somebody who's a psycho from PTSD from having been in the U.S. military, or it was a result of cartel activity, and the Mexican drug cartels exist entirely because of the U.S. war on drugs that create a black market that allow for that. Notice you don't see violent cartels doing alcohol because it's legal. You did when it was illegal. When alcohol prohibition hit in this country, the mob immediately took it over. It got nasty and horrible and violent as a result of the government laws. And then the moment it was repealed, the mob lost control of it and it got peaceful again. And the stupid war on drugs is the same thing. It's absolutely evil and it makes it 1,000 times worse. By the way, I'm one of the weirdos who's never even done, I'd never even smoked pot, never did any of that. Lots of people do, including lots of anarchists, like smoke marijuana and do other stuff. So this isn't, I want to have my habit. I recognize that government made it 1,000 times worse, which is what they do with everything. But the whole descended into darkness. What the hell are you talking about? And anyone who's been at these events, what was the descending into darkness part? We were hanging out, having fun, having discussions, people having talks, having events, laughing, and making new friends. And that was descending into darkness, I guess, because miles away, unrelated to the event, something really bad happened. I mean, imagine the equivalent of anything else. Like, this is how desperate they are. Like, if there was a chess club that got together and played chess, and then one of its members was like walking down a dark alley in a city nearby and got murdered. Are you really going to report this chess club that descended into darkness? That's how stupid and dishonest this is. It's amazing. And it's predictable. And it's, I would encourage voluntarists to not be too upset because of course they're going to do this. Of course, the mouthpieces of the ruling class are going to bash people who say we don't want the ruling class to have power. But the level of dishonesty is just amazing. A fringe political community. I mean, technically we're a fringe because, unlike most people, we don't want a giant authoritarian ruling class stomping on everybody. Let's see. I'll just scan and see if there's anything ridiculous. Focuses on a small subset known as anarcho-capitalism. By the way, if you haven't seen my other video about anarcho-communists, because the commies are all upset too that the word anarchist is being applied to, well, actual anarchists. See my video called Real Anarchists for an explanation of that. Then it just starts to, and I understand that titles have to get people's attention, but lying your ass off in the title is a little beyond just sensationalism. And they mention, well, this mentions it, so I guess it's not a spoiler. The murder, which made international headlines at the time, was blamed on cartel violence. So, we're not the drug cartels. We don't like the drug cartels. They're violent institutions, and they exist because of another violent institution called government. So to blame voluntarists who oppose aggression entirely, it's based on the non-aggression principle, to blame them for a murder committed as a direct result of statist and authoritarian power. I mean, what level of dishonesty are you going to go to? All right, so I won't read this whole thing. And then, and then the Daily Beast. These anarchists wanted paradise. They ended up in hell. Funny, I don't remember ending up in hell, and I was there every year that this is talking about. I don't even know if the series gets to the one last year. I don't think it was very big because travel restrictions were a nightmare. I don't even know much about that one. But so apparently I was there when we ended up in hell and didn't notice. I was just having a fun time with a bunch of people who want a free world. Look at God, this manages to be worse. The new HBO docuseries, The Anarchists, examines Anarchapulco, an annual crypto-fueled anarchist festival that turned into a murder-filled nightmare. You lying sack of shit. Okay, Nick Shager. I think it's worth pointing out when somebody's a lying sack of shit. Nick Shager, you're a lying sack of shit. A murder-filled nightmare? It wasn't at the event. It had nothing to do with the event. And murder-filled, one person from the community got murdered miles away in a thing that had nothing to do with the event by the drug cartels. And so this counts as a murder-filled nightmare. Filled with one murder. It's just amazing. Okay, I don't know if it's worth going into this. And then their descriptions. And they usually start out with the most outlandishly ridiculous claims. So then he's describing a bunch of things, and they do mention the guy who, a military vet with severe PTSD. Why did he have that? Did he have that PTSD? Was he that screwed up? And we knew him too. Was he that screwed up as a result of being a voluntarist? No, he was that screwed up as a result of being a murderer for the state. Being in the U.S. military. Statism screwed him up that bad. Now, his involvement in what it was, I still don't know. It's vague. But he was absolutely a messed up individual entirely because he was in the U.S. military acting as a thug and a murderer for them. And later he recognized how wrong that was. Unfortunately, that didn't undo how screwed up he was as a result of it. So government and the military completely demolishes somebody psychologically, which it has done over and over and over and over and over again to people in the military. And they want to blame this on voluntarism, which is don't initiate violence against other people. The level of dishonesty is just amazing. Chaos followed, which should have been right up these anarchists' alley. Are you that lazy or just that dishonest that you didn't bother to find out what we believe? In fact, this is a review of the series. He's lying his ass off. Because all over the place in the series, actual anarchists, including Amanda and myself, explain we're not against organization. We're not against cooperation. We're not looking for chaos and mayhem. That is obvious to anybody with 3 brain cells who watched the first 10 minutes of just the first episode. And this guy presumably has watched the whole thing, the whole series, because I think people who review it are allowed to see it ahead of time. Chaos followed, which should have been right up these anarchists' alley. That's just a lie. He's not even dumb enough to actually believe that. He's just a liar because we don't bow at the feet of government. It's just, it's so bizarre to see the desperation and to see how irrational they get. And, this isn't the first time. The media completely, like, if anybody says, hey, I'm not sure when it comes to kids if getting this is, like, more of a risk than a help. And you know what I'm talking about. But if I say it, it'll get censored, because that's how desperate the control freaks are to make sure you can't have a rational discussion with, oh, you're an extremist, anti-science, blah, blah, blah. If you ask something, if you point at data and go, hey, wait a minute, it looks like, they just completely flip out. And so it's not new. Like the mainstream media, which isn't mainstream anymore, like their viewership is falling apart. They're pathetic. A ton of people, Joe Rogan's audience is way bigger than theirs. Russell Brand's audience is way bigger than theirs. A bunch of normal people who just have honest discussions, and they're not even voluntarists, not yet anyway. But just people having calm discussions have viewerships that completely dwarf CNN and the mainstream and all this crap, because so many people are realizing this is literally just statist propaganda. They don't even do a good job of pretending to be objective or neutral at all. They just have complete tantrums at anybody critical of the state. And so, of course, they're doing that here. And it's just, so that's enough of, repeating their BS. But again, I would encourage voluntarists, be encouraged by this, because this is actually a good sign. When they have to flip out and lie this bad, first of all, it shows their desperation. It shows they have no substance. They can't actually explain why the giant corrupt monstrosity that everybody now knows is just this despicable beast, left and right. They can't actually explain why that thing should have control over all our lives, because of course it shouldn't. So they have to just demonize and vilify anybody saying, we don't think anybody should have that power, especially not those crooks, but nobody should have that power. So they have to demonize and flip out. But not only does it show their desperation, it's not going to work. Like, this is a series on HBO. Normal people can watch it. They can hear what actual voluntarists have to say. And they can hear the story of what happened around Anarchapulco, because, yeah, there's drama and there's disagreement and there's, the really sad murder that, like, to blame that on anarchism is completely insane. In fact, nobody's that dumb. They're just that dishonest. But normal people can watch and hear what the ideas actually are. So when the mainstream media, the formerly mainstream media, lies this obviously about it, they're only going for the pathetic idiots who still watch CNN and just take their word for stuff. Because anybody who watches it is going to go, that's not what happened. What are you talking about? Fringe, chaos, mayhem. And then you look at, people talking, you look at our friend Lisa. Like, does she seem fringe, chaotic? She's this sweet, really intelligent, very well-spoken, thinks things out, very principled. Like, that's chaos and mayhem, and just give me a frickin' break. But that's how desperate they are, because they know, and they're terrified that people are going to watch it and go, they kind of make a good point. I kind of agree with a bunch of this. Maybe I should look into it. And that's what they can't afford to have happen. Well, it's going to happen, no matter how much tantrums they have. People are looking into this. Normal people, well-educated people, successful people are looking into it and going, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Why do we have these parasitic crooks? Where did they get the right to, like, rob us and boss us around? Like, yeah, we're all in favor of cooperation and organization and stuff. It's not every man for himself. It's not living like cavemen. But what's with all this authoritarian crap they keep imposing on us? These crooked, lying political scumbags, left and right. So this, of course, was going to be their response to these ideas getting in front of more people. And I think it's freaking outstanding. And I think Kim and Todd did an outstanding job with the series. It tells a story which, of course, is going to include the drama and the personal stuff that happens with anything. And then within that, within all the different personalities and the, conflicting priorities and stuff that happen in every group, because that's what people do, you actually get the ideas conveyed succinctly and clearly. And that is what makes the mainstream, the formerly mainstream, flip out. They can't have this be a rational discussion. They can't have people hearing these ideas and going, oh, so it isn't like Molotov cocktail throwing punks. It's like people who think all our organization should be based on voluntary consent instead of authoritarian coercion. Well, sounds kind of nice. Maybe I want to learn more about that. And that's what they're flipping out about. That is why they have to try this hard to condemn it and demonize it and just lie their asses off, even just about the factual stuff of what happened. Not only do they have to mischaracterize the people who are there as crazy, fringe, dangerous kooks descend into hell. And for those of you who have been to the event, it's so funny. And it's also upsetting and offensive that they're lying that bad about it. But the last thing they want is for this to become a discussion. And I've said that for years. They can demonize, they can mischaracterize, and as long as people think, oh, well, we have to have a government, they can try to hang on to their power. But the moment people are capable of pausing long enough to have the discussion and have a back and forth to find out what it's really about, when we get to that point, statism is doomed. It's only a matter of time. It's not immediately doomed, but it is absolutely inevitable that the cult of statism is going to fall. And it is going to fall now. And this is a cool step along the way, to have these ideas landing on HBO in front of a whole lot of people who've never heard what anarchism really is. They might occasionally get Antifa and Molotov cocktail throwing idiots and some commie propaganda over here, but they've never actually heard of voluntarism, and now they are. And that is what is giving the control freaks a complete meltdown, to the point where they have to hire their pathetic lapdog propagandists to go out there and just make crap up to try to scare people away. If you want to think about things and hear about ideas and consider whether they make sense to you, like as if you're capable of making your own decisions, instead of letting the mainstream go, don't look at that, don't look at that, don't look at that, they're scary, it's death, it's hell on earth, If you want to actually think about something and see whether it makes sense to you, I highly suggest you read my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, which goes into great detail of why government is never a moral or sane or rational option. It just isn't. And I know we were all taught, including me, we were all taught to think it's necessary, it's legitimate, you have elections, you have constitutions, yada, yada, yada. And this book spells out, because it took me years to come to the realization that, there can't be such thing as a legitimate government. And it spells out the proof of why that is. It's not just a matter of, do you prefer this to that? It's, this can't ever be good or legitimate or moral, so maybe we should try peaceful coexistence instead. That is literally what the propagandists for the state are trying to portray as death and chaos and darkness and hell on earth. And all right, so whether you read my book or look into voluntarism other ways and watch video, you can watch a gazillion of my videos for free on YouTube. And lots of other people have awesome books and articles and stuff about it. But when you see the actual ideas and like spelled out very clearly in logical, principled form, and you compare that with how government tries to portray us, then you know damn well, A, they're lying their asses off, and B, they are really desperate to have this conversation not happen. And I would suggest to you, whatever government really, really wants you to not hear and not think about, you should probably listen to and think about, and then decide what you think about it.